Hello students, today we will study History Chapter 9 Life in Towns and Villages. In this chapter, we will learn about second urbanization, features of the second urbanization, urban centers, its sources, towns and villages. The change from village or rural life to city or urban life is called urbanization. India witnessed urbanization around 2500 BCE with the growth of the Indus Valley civilization. People started learning settled life, which resulted in the production of surplus crops and in the emergence of activities other than farming. But this first urbanization in India abruptly came to an end as these cities declined around 1500 BCE. The certain end of this civilization is attributed to excessive floods, earthquakes, and invasion of other tribes. New cities, second urbanization, came up in India in the later Vedic period around 600 BCE when iron began to be used. Agriculture. Iron access helped in clearing the forest more easily and more land could now be brought under cultivation. A larger area under cultivation and improved tools and implements increased the production of food grains. Gradually, the farmers are dependent on rain, but now the improved irrigational facilities were also support agriculture, like many wells, canals, and tanks were constructed during this period. All these developments led to an increase in the production of crops. Growth of trade and commerce. The surplus production of food grains resulted in favorable conditions for the growth of trade. People now sold their surplus in towns and cities, so many traders then formed shrenis or guilds to regulate trade and safeguard their interest. Shrenis or guilds means an association of merchants. In Buddhist texts mentioned a large number of specialized craftsmen like weavers, goldsmiths, carpenters, leatherworks, etc. Besides regularizing trade, the trade guilds also functioned as banks, where a member could deposit their money and avail loans if they required. These trade guilds also gave generous donations to temples and monasteries. Trade was not limited within the Indian subcontinent, but also the trade contacts were established with foreign countries. So, with an expansion in trade and commerce, there is a need of coins. So, coins were widely circulated during that period. The coins were mostly minted in copper and silver and have irregular shape. An emblem that had some sort of meaning attached to it or the ruler's insignia was engraved on the coins. About people. Most of the people living in villages were engaged in agriculture. Farmers belonged to three major categories: big landowners, small landowners, and the landless laborers. In South India, landowners were called villalers and grihapatis in North India. There were some small cultivators also. They were known as grihapatis in North India and ujahavar in South India. The landless laborers worked on others' lands. Such laborers are called Kadaisiyar and Adimai in South India and Dasas and Karmakaras in North India. Most villages had a headman. He was called Grama Bhojakka. His position was hereditary and he also performed the duties of a policeman and a legal judge. Usually, he was the largest landowner of the village. He had many slaves and laborers to cultivate his vast land. On the behalf of the king, he collected the taxes from the people in the village. Urban centers. Due to agricultural expansion, urban centers were developed, and each urban center has its own unique character. Some urban centers grew into important political units, others developed into religious centers or market towns. Types of urban centers, political centers, Rajagriha, Shravasti, Champa, Achitra, and Kausambi were known as the political centers. Ujjain is known as a market town. And some religious centers are Kashi, Mathura, Varanasi, and Vaishali. Saupara, Arikamedu, and Tamra Lipti were known as the coastal towns. Market towns were the hub of trading activities. Coastal towns developed from the maritime trade that they enjoyed with other countries. Maritime means connected with the sea route. Earlier, they may have existed as fishing towns, and the proximity of sea may have led to them becoming maritime trade centers. Some towns were multifunctional, like Takshila. Takshila is a part of modern day Pakistan nowadays, and it was excavated in 1913 by Sir John Marshall. It was inhabited since the Mauryan period, but in the 2nd century, it was annexed by the Indo-Greek kingdom of Bactria. Under them, Takshila developed into a planned city. It functioned as an administrative unit during the Mauryan period and as well as by the Indo-Greeks also. A number of major trade routes, Eastern India, Western Asia, Kashmir and Central Asia, went through Takshila. It was also flourished as a great learning center with the establishment of the Takshila University. In the two sects of Buddhism and Jainism, it was known as a Buddhist hub. The Gandhara school of art, which was an amalgamation of Greco-Roman features developed during the Kushan dynasty. So, at one time, we can say that Takshila functioned as an administrative unit, a Buddhist center, a learning hub, and an important meeting junction for trade routes. There were many literary and archaeological sources available for this period, such as Jatakas, Buddhist Tripitakas, and the Sangam literature in Tamil proves to be a reliable source for this period. Besides these, some archaeological sources also witnessed the use of a fine pottery. These were identified as the northern black polished ware. This was extensively used in many places of central, eastern, and southern India. In many cities, ring wells are found made of large ceramic pots stacked together in rows. They were probably used as toilets, drains, or were used to dispose garbage. Arikamedu, it was a small fishing town that later flourished as a Roman trade center during the ancient period. Arikamedu was excavated in the 1940s by British archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler. Arikamedu was a prosperous settlement that exported beads, glass shell, bangles, and semi-precious stones. Spices were also a major item of export. Fine red Roman clay pots have been found in Arikamedu, and broken ceramic pieces have been found in certain ports along the Red Sea. So this is indicative of the trade relations between Arikamedu and the Roman Empire.